In life, there are times where we find ourselves going through tough situations that seem impossible to get out of. And during these moments, many of us turn to God in prayer, seeking His help and guidance. But sometimes our prayers don't seem to be answered, and we start to lose hope. However, the Bible tells us that we should not be afraid to call upon God even in the darkest of times, because He is always there to help us. Today, we are going to talk about how to pray for supernatural breakthrough when things seem impossible. We will use two Bible verses to guide our discussion, Psalm 50-15 and Isaiah 41-10. So let's dive into it. Psalm 50-15 reads, "And call upon me in the day of trouble, I will deliver thee." This verse comes from the Psalms, which is a book of the Bible that contains a collection of songs and poems used for worship and prayer. Psalm 50 is a psalm of David, who was a king of Israel. In this psalm, David acknowledges God's greatness and his own frailty, and he asks God to save him from his enemies. Verse 15 specifically tells us that if we call upon God in the day of our trouble, He will deliver us. What does it mean to call upon God? It means to cry out to God for help and guidance. It means to acknowledge our need for God's intervention in our lives. When we call upon God, we are acknowledging that we are powerless to change our situation on our own and that we need His help. But the promise in this verse is that God will deliver us. The word deliver means to rescue or to save. God promises to save us from whatever trouble we may be facing. He promises to come to our aid and to help us overcome any obstacle. But there are conditions attached to this promise. Verse 15 tells us to call upon God in the day of our trouble. In other words, we must call upon Him when we are in need of help. We cannot wait until things get too bad before we start praying for God's intervention. We need to start praying as soon as we feel the need for God's help. Many times we delay praying because we feel that our problems are not big enough or that God has more important matters to deal with. But the truth is that any problem that is big enough for us is big enough for God to intervene. No matter how small or insignificant our problems may seem, they are important to God because they affect us, His children. Also, verse 15 tells us to call upon God in the day of our trouble. In other words, we must call upon Him with faith and urgency. We cannot be casual or indifferent in our prayers. We must believe that God can save us, and we must ask Him for help with urgency. Many times we pray without really believing that God will answer our prayers. We pray because we feel that we have to, but we don't really expect God to intervene. We must remember that God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He is the same God who performed miracles in the past, and He still performs miracles today. He wants to deliver us from our troubles, but He needs us to have faith in Him and to ask Him for help. Now let's look at the second Bible verse, Isaiah 41-10, which reads, "Fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee, yea, I will help thee. I will uphold thee with my righteous right hand." This verse comes from the book of Isaiah, which is one of the major prophets in the Old Testament. Isaiah was a prophet who lived in Judah during the 8th century BC. Isaiah 41 is one of the longest chapters in the book of Isaiah, and it contains a series of messages that God gave to Isaiah to deliver to the people of Judah. In particular, verses 10-16 are part of a longer passage that begins in chapter 40, verse 1. These verses are known as the Comfort for the People of Israel passage because they contain a message of comfort and encouragement for the people of Israel during a time of great suffering. The people of Israel were being oppressed by the empires of Assyria and Babylon, and they were looking to God for deliverance. Isaiah was told to tell them not to be afraid because God was with them. He would help them and support them with His righteous right hand. The first thing that Isaiah 41-10 tells us is not to fear. Fear is a natural human response to danger or uncertainty, but it can also paralyze us and prevent us from taking action. When we are afraid, we may feel like giving up or that things are hopeless. But Isaiah tells us not to be afraid because God is with us. This means that we can trust in God's protection and guidance, even when we feel like we are in danger or that things are hopeless. The next thing that Isaiah 41-10 tells us is that God is with us. He is our God. This means that we have a personal relationship with God and that He cares about us and wants the best for us. When we know that God is with us, we can feel confident and secure, no matter what challenges we may face. We don't have to worry about the future because God has a plan for us, and He will help us to fulfill His purposes. The third thing that Isaiah 41:10 tells us is that God will strengthen us, help us, and uphold us with His righteous right hand. This means that God will give us the strength and support we need to overcome any challenge. When we feel like we are weak or incapable of doing something, God will be there to help us. He will give us the strength we need to keep going and to achieve our goals. So, how can we apply these Bible verses to our lives? First, we need to remember that God is with us and that He wants to help us. He wants to deliver us from our troubles, and He wants to strengthen us when we are weak. When we face tough situations, we need to call upon God with faith and urgency. We need to believe that He can help us, and we need to ask Him for help. We cannot be afraid to pray and to ask God for what we need. Second, we need to acknowledge that we are not alone in this world. God is with us, and He will never leave us or forsake us. When we feel afraid or helpless, we need to remember that God is our God, and that He loves us and cares about us. Finally, we need to remember that God is righteous and just. He will do what is right, and He will help those who are oppressed or suffering. When we see injustice, or when we see people who are in need, we need to remember that God is in control, and that He will bring justice and peace to our world. As we close this video, we want to encourage you to seek God in prayer, no matter what you may be going through. Remember that God is with you, and He wants to help you. Call upon Him with faith and urgency, and He will deliver you. Also, we want to invite you to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already done so. We would love to have you join our community of believers who are seeking God and His righteousness. Together, we can encourage each other in our walk with Christ, and we can share the gospel with those who don't know Jesus. Thank you for watching this video, and may God bless you. And remember, never lose hope because God is in control. Until next time.